Mr. Vice President, welcome back to Meet the Press.
It's glad to be. I'm happy to be back.
It's good to have you back. All right, let me start with, obviously, the news of this week. You've been tough on Donald Trump, on the words that he said. We now have multiple accusers out. Why shouldn't he get the benefit of the doubt from these accusers?
His own words. I don't have to even go to the accusers. When a man says that what he said is a textbook definition of sexual assault. I mean, it's a textbook definition. And the thing that makes it so believable that he engaged in that kind of activity is not just that he said it, but his sort of instinctive abuse of power. It's, he acts in the private sector, he acts in the way he treats employees, in that, I live in the penthouse, I'm a billionaire, I'm a star, and I can do what I want. That's the most disturbing piece. My father used to say the greatest abuse is the abuse of power. Economic power, political power, physical power. And this is not a guy that should be representing the United States in any way.
Why do you think it's not been disqualifying for even more voters yet?
Well, I never know, and I'm not being a wise guy. You would know better. I don't know how deeply it's sunk in to the consciousness. I don't know that, we think that something gets said once, twice, 10 times, 1,000 times over a period of a week, and everyone absorbs it. Most people are just trying to figure out how to put bread and butter on the table, so I don't know. I think it's sunk in, though, pretty deeply. It's changed the dynamic around the country in a pretty substantial way so far.
How much do you think do we have a coarse culture that has given this a permission slip?
The thing that, look, Kathy, who runs my office out front, I want to say her last name. I asked her on Monday was a holiday, Columbus Day, so I called her to double check on my schedule. When I started on Tuesday, there was a change at home, and I said, "You watched the debate?" She said, "My daughter, I think going to 6th grade, had 2 of her friends over, and the teacher said you should watch part of the debate." She said, "I was embarrassed. I turned it on. I had to turn it off, told them I couldn't watch it." This is the coursing of the culture that's been going on for some time now. But this is a new level. And I was helping my daughter with my granddaughter, she's a senior in high school, with a paper last night where I live, the vice president's residence. And she started asking me questions, and she's a bright, bright young woman. And I was embarrassed. Even, I have 4 granddaughters. I was embarrassed that this is even being discussed.
That's the lesson for men. I've heard a lot of people say, as the father or the mother of 2 daughters or 3 daughters, what about the message to young men or young boys?
Look, that's why I started this It's On Us campaign on college campuses. We got to change the culture. When we're talking about abuse on campuses, and 1 in 4 women being sexually abused on campuses. And so I did this virtual town hall meeting with thousands of students. And I asked them to go to a website and to tell us what could we do to better protect them. You know what the overwhelming answer was? Get men involved. The vast majority of men don't share the view of Donald Trump. I was a pretty good athlete in high school and college. I don't ever remember that kind of locker room talk. Never. You might have a guy say, "Boy, look at that," or make some comments like that. But the idea that she lets me do anything because I'm a celebrity is just sick. And what's wrong is we have to change the whole culture here. And that no man has a right to touch a woman, to raise her hand to a woman, to abuse a woman for any reason.
Why do you think women still struggle to report it when it happens?
Because they get tried again. When I wrote the Violence Against Women Act, the hardest, I was convinced, no one wanted to hear it, including the women's groups, you remember, in the beginning when I first wrote it. And because they thought it would take the focus off of gender and take the focus off of choice, et cetera. But I was confident if we brought forward victims who had the courage to speak and tell their story, we'd force Americans to look at this dirty little secret. Nobody wants to face it. I mean, you know your next door neighbor is doing something. You know a coworker is doing something. It's been like, this is, I don't want to know it.
Right.
But I wanted to rip the Band-Aid off. And the women who came forward, for example, one woman came forward. You remember that young woman named Marla who was a model in New York, and the guy who she rented from, kept hitting on her, and he got so frustrated he hired two guys to slash her face. Remember that? And I remember asking her to come and testify, and I said, "Tell me, what did your friend say?" I said, "Why are you in a bar? What were you wearing? How long was the skirt? I mean, did you have a bra on?" That question should never, it is never, never, never the woman's fault. No man has the right to touch a woman if she, and so part of this is most men, the overwhelming majority of men know that. But what we have to do is change the culture so they don't feel like they are the guys who are out.
The last time this really impacted our politics was Clarence Thomas and Anita Hill.
Yeah.
Anita Hill did an interview earlier this year. She expressed a little disappointment in you.
Yeah, no,
And,
she did.
And what was your reaction to that?
My reaction was I thought it was unfair. I voted against Clarence Thomas. I believed her. The question was whether or not that she should be able to initially, should she be able to just make her complaint without identifying herself? And you can't run a star chamber. You got to do that. It was very, very, very tough.
Anything you'd do differently?
No.
Do you feel like she's
I don't
misguided?
blame her for being extremely upset because she stood there and she had witnesses come. You may remember, I got in a shouting match with the guy who said, "Well, she asked for it." But it's one of the reasons why now they come forward, but why women initially didn't come forward. We actually had cases, and I've got a federal law passed. Judge asking a woman, "Well, you're wearing the bar. Were you wearing underwear? How short was your skirt?" What the hell difference does that make? No man has a right to touch a woman.
As you know, Donald Trump is bringing up everything Bill Clinton right now. Should that matter?
No, it shouldn't matter. Look, I can't make any excuses for Bill Clinton's conduct. And I wouldn't attempt to make any excuses for the conduct. But he paid a price for it. He paid a price. He was impeached. And he expressed his deep sorrow and acknowledged what he did. This guy, as I said, has acknowledged that he has been a sexual predator. He's acknowledged that he's abused his power. And as I said, the textbook definition of what constitutes sexual assault.
Do you know him? Do you know Trump?
I've met him, but I don't know him. No, I don't know him.
Just a fundraiser type of thing, or something like that?
I don't even know where. I'm sure I may have been in this company once, twice.
Yeah.
I don't even remember. I know I have met him somewhere, but I don't remember where.
Let me ask you this. One of the things that happened during the Obama years is that it surfaced up some racism that we thought was gone, turned out it was swept under the rug. Do you worry that the election of the first woman president is going to actually surface more public sexism in a similar way that we saw with President Obama?
I think so. And by the way, Barack and the president and I didn't think it wouldn't surface.
You thought it would?
He thought it would. I'll speak for myself.
Fair enough. Yeah.
I thought it would because you still had there's still a small portion of the population that just can't understand, and you don't have to be David Dukes. I mean, there's people that just don't understand how does black man get elected, but he transformed the view of America around the world.
Mm-hmm.
It made every place I go around the world said, I guess America means what they say they mean what they believe. I mean, they believe what they say. They elected a black man. It was a strong statement, but it's a distinct minority that has, and minority.
You think this is something she's got to fear, that she's got to deal with, or just we as a society are going to say?
I don't think as much. I don't think as much. I think that we've moved, thank God, too far along. in terms of there's not a single, man I know, no matter how much of a sex he is, doesn't know. There are a whole lot of really smart, competent women and smarter than he is. They know, they may resent it, but they know it. But I just think it was, anyway, I think it will surface, and the attacks on her will be.
But you don't think it's going to be as bad as what we saw in sort of the early
No,
days of
I don't
President?
think so. At least I hope not.
Let's talk about this working class white voter issue that Democrats seem to have. Sort of the people that you speak to, Biden voters. You just look at Pennsylvania right now. The 15 counties that make up Northeast Pennsylvania. You and the president won it by 3 points. Right now, she trails by 8 points. It's clear there is something, a lack of connectivity there, or something with Trump. What's your diagnosis?
Well, look, I think two things. One, I think there is sort of a double standard for a woman candidate. When I go to Scranton, and my numbers in Scranton are, I wish they were that way everywhere in the world. And, you were a friend of my Beau's, my son, and he was a great admirer of yours. You and I start talking about him on the air, and I might find myself choking up. Everybody looks at me and says, well, he's a good father, and what a decent guy. She chokes up and says something, for whatever reason it's there, she's playing the woman card, man. This is the way, this is different, this is different. Number one. Number two, the truth is, I don't think and I'm a broken record in the Democratic Party in this.
Yes.
I don't think we speak enough to the plight of a family, husband and wife, making $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 a year, 2 kids, and they're struggling.
You know what they say? I talk to these voters. They sit there and they say, you know what? Obama and Biden, they worry about this minority group. They worry about that minority group. They worry about these voters over here. They worry about this state. What about me?
They don't talk
That's
to
what
me.
I hear. I hear this more
No,
often
by
when
the
I'm in
way-
Waterloo, Iowa, Scranton,
And by
Pennsylvania.
the way, and I do too. I mean, I think I'm correct. I think I'm the last United States senator that got a majority of the white male vote in this state. Because I've always speak to these people, because that's kind of where I come from. And I think we haven't shown enough respect. For example, what happened is we had to spend so much time dragging the car out of the ditch, worrying about going over the cliff, dealing with people who didn't have enough to eat, making sure that people were able to just hang on, that it's only now that we got the economy back and wages are starting to rise, that we can begin to focus on what is a large portion of the middle class who's felt like they've been left behind and we don't talk to their needs. Look, if you're making $90,000 a year, you're working on an assembly line and your wife is a waitress and you're making 90 grand together, try sending your kid to college. Try pay for it.
But, you and the president have both identified this. Why do you feel like you've not, if you both know this, why have you not made enough effort?
Well, as I said, the first 6 years were just keeping us from going off the cliff. And if you notice, the president's last 2 State of the Union speeches were more like I've always been talking about the tax structure and how unfair it is, talking about that's why we proposed 2 years of free community college and how we pay for it, talking about the need for us to make sure that people have access to decent jobs and job training and so on and so forth. But the first 2 years, the first 4 to 6 years, it was just everything landed on his desk but locusts.
All right, let's talk about her then. What's your advice to her? She's got this deplorables line that's going to be hard for her to shake. I mean, look, President Obama used bitter, cling to your guns and Bible, and he never shook that with a certain part of the electorate. She may never shake deplorables, but how should she try?
By demonstrating where her heart is, what she cares about. And what she cares about are all those people who are struggling. That's been who she is. Look, as I said, I know her well. And she has been so battered and beaten, and we all make mistakes, she's made mistakes too, that for her to open up,
Right.
like for example, I remember talking to her about having I had breakfast there every Tuesday morning when she was Secretary of State at my home. And I remember talking about college and about paying for college, and telling the story about how my dad tried to borrow money to help me I had a grant and aid, but get me enough money to get to Amherst. And I went to his place of business, and I wanted to see him about something. And I walked out, he was pacing back and forth. He said, Joey, I'm so ashamed. I'm so ashamed. My word. I'm so ashamed. I went to the bank and they won't lend me the money, honey. I'm so ashamed. She's sitting across from me, filling up, talking about, because she understands that it's not just the kid that doesn't get a chance, it's how many middle-class people have been stripped of their dignity, stripped of the one thing.
So you understand why they're gravitating to Trump right now? They're gravitating to somebody that says, I'm just going to make it all better again.
Yeah, no, I do. But it's not, I don't think there's so much gravitating to Trump. They've been stung so badly by the recession, hurt so badly. We lost $17 trillion in household wealth in the recession. We gained back that and more. But guess what? If you lost your home and you're not back in the home, you don't benefit. When the market was, if you lost your investment in the market through your 401k, and now it's 18,000, the guys who made the big money, it wasn't a cabal, and they look around and say, wait a minute.
So I got two more topics to get to, and I'm getting the wrap sign. So I hope I can get to a couple of them. I want to go to Syria here. I know you guys are doing a big session that's coming up next week about what to do. Why is there not a no-fly zone over Aleppo? Is this a
simple proposition?
Yeah.
The first things first. We must defeat ISIL. We must take out Raqqa. We must take out Mosul. We must eliminate the caliphate. It's the direct, immediate threat to the American people, number one. The DOD has told us in the beginning that the assets we need to be able to do that would have to be diverted. We could not do both. Could not do both. That's number one. Number two, in order to be able to do what needs to be done, you remember we tried to get the authority to use force before. All those Republicans who talked about how tough they were. I spoke to 156 members of the House and Senate for a minimum of an hour. Right. Groups of 2 to 25 in the Situation Room. No support. No support. So to ask, okay, and they'd say, what happens? We send planes over there, they get shot down. We have to go in and get them. Well, yeah, we have to go in and get them.
Well, let me ask you this. How does Syria not become the Rwanda of this administration? That you guys look back and wonder, what if?
Rwanda was soluble. Rwanda was soluble. This is complicated. We have to deal with central and west and eastern Iraq to clear ISIL. That will fundamentally change the
dynamic. So once Mosul is taken care of, you think the focus can be back on Syria and trying to solve this?
Raqqa, too. Raqqa is the central place where we know plotting is taking place against the homeland in those areas. Secondly, Russia is in real trouble. They're getting themselves in a real quagmire. They have serious economic problems at home. Right. They're finding themselves dragged into this. The combination of ISIL gone, Russia in a totally different place, creates a whole lot of additional opportunities.
So we're not going to regret not doing more in Aleppo?
The answer is we regret whenever anyone dies. I regret that we're not doing something about genital mutilation in Africa. I regret that there's still real problems in Afghanistan. But there has to be a sense of humility about what is able to be done at the time. And what we're doing is the right thing, generating a consensus among the Arab countries as to what we should be doing in the region, and at the same time going after ISIL to destroy it.
All right, final question. When I talked with former Russian ambassador Mike McFaul.
Yeah.
And we talked about the idea that every once you got to respond when they're hacking. You got to do something. He described it as a high, hard one. Maybe just, sort of like in baseball, you throw a high, hard one to send a message. Why haven't we sent a message yet to Putin?
We're sending a message. We have the capacity to do it. And the message
he'll know it?
He'll know it. And it'll be at the time of our choosing and under the circumstances that have the greatest impact.
Will it be enough, do you think, that it'll get him to back off? I mean, how concerned are you that the country is actually going to question the result of this election?
I am not concerned. The reason I'm not is we're working very closely with all the departments of elections across the country, number one. Number two, the American people are pretty damn resilient. And number three, the capacity to fundamentally alter the election is not what people think. And I tell you what, to the extent that they do, we will be proportional in what we do. And
So a message is going to be sent. Will the public know it?
I hope not.
Mr. Vice President, I'll leave it there. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here, and then click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.